Judge Philip Loescher said that he was not convinced that there were reasonable grounds before him to confirm a conviction against the applicants. And so where does this matter leave us now?
Well, I've spoken to the NPA's Luvuyo Mfako, and he said in probably one of the most profound understatements of the year that this was a serious blow for the National Prosecuting Authority, because I've also spoken to the Gupta's lawyers. They maintain that this vindicates their client's stance, that there's simply no evidence that they benefited from the so-called Estina Dairy Project scam, and that they will be pushing NDPP Sean Abrams to withdraw the charges against him or pursue them at his own peril. So they're making it very clear that if the NPA goes ahead and this case falls apart, they will be suing the National Prosecuting Authority for malicious prosecution.
The provisional restraint order was not only cast aside, it was done so with costs for two counsel. I mean, that really is a setback, isn't it?
Well, remember that this was second bite of the cherry. Just initially, like earlier this year, we saw the National Prosecuting Authority bringing another application under POCA, saying that certain assets were either the proceeds of crime linked to Estina or the instrumentality of an offence. Now, Judge Foushir Jordan reversing that order that he had granted, saying that evidence given by the Bank of Baroda seemed to very powerfully suggest that the AFU had confused transactions which took place in a Bank of Baroda pool account serving 750 people, including Guptas and other people, that they confused that with evidence showing that there was a direct payment from Estina to these Gupta beneficiaries. Now, that judgment was one of the key issues that the judge today addressed, and saying again that in the most profound way that he does not believe at this point that there's a reasonable prospect that a conviction may happen. So not even will. The threshold here is very low, and the state has failed to meet that threshold.
So one of the things we heard today was that the court saying that Sean Abrams, or at least the NPA, had relied on evidence that had many shortcomings that couldn't be explained. Where does that leave the NPA? What exactly have they messed up on here?
There seems to be a profound level of difficulty in terms of the way that they've presented their case. Now, we can't say that this ruling means that the Gupta family and their associates are innocent. But as the judge himself today pointed out in the Sheikh matter, money laundering is a highly sophisticated crime. And to show that money laundering has occurred, where money may have been paid through multiple accounts, it requires a level of sophisticated financial analysis. And I think I have to be honest with you. I think that's been absent in what's happened here, and I think that's where we're seeing the deficits.
But take us back. I mean, if you're looking at the story as a layperson, certainly from what's been reported, we all understood there was that 10 million rand that had been paid into a personal account of the Guptas. We know that the farmers around the Estina project did not benefit from the way that we'd been told. We know there was the wedding. There are all these allegations that point to a link, at the very least, to the monies that flowed out of that project. It would seem from a layperson, the NPA should have been able to establish those.
The 10 million rand with Atul Gupta was the difficulty, because that money came from the pool account. There was no evidence that, as the state put it, that Estina made monetary payments directly to Guptas or Gupta entities, and that was one of the difficulties. So they may have been able to show that subsequently with a detailed forensic investigation. Money went all over the place. But their case was this 10 million went from Estina to Atul, and that fell apart because the Bank of Baroda said, you're confusing our pool account with the Estina account. Let us give you the Estina bank account. No payments were made by Estina to Atul. The stories about the wedding, it's clear that the Estina Dairy Project was defined by untoward payments from the Free State government. The question now is, do you have the evidence to show that there was a complicit or an involvement of the Gupta family in it? And what the court is saying today is, at this point, you don't.
I mean, one of the things that came out of the so-called Gupta emails and all of those, allegations was exactly this issue of the money trail being difficult to pin down.
Absolutely, and I think, a number of academics have spoken about this in terms of the hollowing out of the state. What we're seeing here, I think, is a consequence of the hollowing out of the state. very experienced professionals. If you think about someone like Glenys Breitenbach, specialized commercial crime prosecutor, one of the best in the country, removed under the conditions that she was, people that were vocal about, for instance, the Richard Mhluli matter, all of those people were taken out, and that has consequences. There may be the best will in the world on the part of the NPA, but you need experienced people, you need people who know what they're doing, how to follow a money trail, and also, Bongani, how to present that case when and if the matter goes to court.
I suppose it's almost a twist of irony in a sense, because for so long Sean Abrams has been even known as Sean the Sheep. Finally, he takes what you could call decisive action. We saw, dramatic scenes at the house. I mean, I remember visuals of you on television there when that raid happened, but it's a lot of drama, very much like we saw with the former Scorpions, for example, but in this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that the legal boxes have all been ticked.
And in the end of the day, we work and function in a constitutional democracy. Now, we may not, the public may have very strong feelings about the Gupta family, but as you yourself have pointed out, rule of law needs to be applied uniformly to all people, even people we may not like, because it may end up being applied to us, and our standards can't be dropped just because we have certain suspicions and beliefs about certain people and their role in so-called state capture. Certainly the evidence is there that this family was manifestly involved in a lot of untoward activities, but to meet the criminal onus of beyond reasonable doubt, you need to have the evidence and you need to present the case.
Because also you can't have it both ways. You can't go on about state capture and say that there's this sophisticated network, this operation, and then think they're going to leave a trail, they're going to leave crumbs that will lead you to the evidence, that will lead you to the wrongdoing.
Interestingly enough, when I interviewed some of the prosecutors involved in these so-called state capture cases, one of them said to me that she believed it would take them 2 to 3 years to bring these matters to court. Now, on that day of those Gupta arrests, of Varun Gupta, the nephew, for example, that was on the day that President Jacob Zuma resigned. It was a few hours before President Jacob Zuma resigned. And there may be an argument made that, this is a manifestation not of an independent NPA necessarily, but of an NPA that now is serving a different master or perceives itself to be serving a different master.
So at the very least, are we looking for a different role for Sean Abrahams? Does this, really make the case strongly that perhaps he's not necessarily the person who should be at the helm of the NPA?
I think that's a difficult question. I don't know if he can squarely be blamed for what happens here. I mean, the NPA may very well choose to appeal this. I mean, I know that from speaking to them that they're shocked and quite devastated actually by what's happened. But I think this again raises the question of the levels of skills in this institution, the levels of kind of the personnel that you need. And I think that urgently needs to be addressed. If the NPA has any hope of successfully prosecuting these kind of crimes and giving hope to ordinary South Africans that this kind of alleged state capture will have criminal consequences.
Well, it's also going to have political consequences, no doubt. We'll see all of that playing itself out. Tiso Blackstar legal journalist Karyn Maughan joining us this evening.